Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 50 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games, the podcast where we shine a light on the storytellers, the creatives, and the voices behind the camera. So, since we've hit this big milestone, you might have noticed something a little bit different about the start of the episode, and that is because we have a brand new theme song for Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Huge thank you to my good friend Logan64 for writing and recording this. I couldn't be happier with how it's turned out, so once again, huge thanks. And if the name Logan64 sounds familiar to you, Logan was actually a guest on the podcast way back on episode 4, right at the start of this journey, and it's definitely an episode worth revisiting. Logan's a very talented streamer, very talented musician, and he's an all-around great guy, so check him out. So that brings us to today, episode 50, and today's guest is the founder of Couple O Nukes LLC, Mr. Whiskey. Mr. Whiskey is a Navy veteran turned podcaster, comedian, author, preacher, a man who's truly done it all. We had a wide-ranging and fascinating conversation covering everything from his background to the role of AI shaping future generations and how those generations compare to the past. If you'd like to support the podcast, head to the About section where you'll find a link to my link tree. It's got everything from the social media pages, the merch, the website, and much more. Feel free to follow, like, rate, or share the show. Everything you do makes a huge difference. Now, here's the interview. Mr. Whiskey, thank you so much for taking the time to join me on Behind the Camera. Welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. I'm eager to talk. I know you and I had to reschedule a few times, so it builds up the anticipation a little bit, at least. You know, it's like, finally, I got you right where I need you.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, having looked at your website, your Podmatch profile, I have been very keen and eager to talk to you and to get to know a little bit more about you and your story. So, with that being said, you are, yes, Navy veteran, speaker, podcaster, amongst many other things. Take us back to your early days, from say your pre-Navy days through to founding Couple O Nukes LLC.
Yeah, I can totally do that. I was born with a full head of hair, believe it or not. The nurse said it was fake hair and it would all fall off. My dad said a lot of nice words to her that I can't repeat, and that she was wrong. And I won't take the hat off, but to this day, I still have that hair that she said was going to fall off. So that takes you back to the very beginning days before the Navy. But yeah, I had a traumatic upbringing. You know, not the worst. There's definitely worse out there, but there was a lot of emotional and verbal abuse, religious weaponization. There was sexual abuse, domestic violence. There was a lot going on, a lot of controlling and conformity. And, you know, the whole joining the military was when I was 17, my parents kind of said, you're doing this and that's that. And that's the shortest version of it I can give without going down a long rant. But I want to focus specifically on just, in essence, of behind the camera. You know, the military influence to it was that I had been driving about 16 hours a weekend at the time to see my then fiance, because we were in love. I got stationed a couple of states away, so to speak, and so I had to drive a lot to see her. And you know, I was listening to music, but you can only listen to so many hours of music, right? And,
absolutely.
I was like, well, I guess I could, put on some YouTube videos. And then I was like, well, I think these YouTubers have an audio only thing called a podcast, at least the ones I was listening to. And so I was like, let me try podcasting because I don't need to play the video while I'm driving. That's just a distraction. And, I don't need all that. I need to see my GPS. So let's go ahead and put on, because I had an old car. So my phone was my GPS,
Yes.
And yeah, that's how I discovered podcasts. And one of the guys I was listening to, he had a comedy with his father. So it was young LA liberal guy and old white Southern conservative guy just coking and joking. And it was super funny, teaching him Gen Z slang and, talking about Southern barbecue and all that stuff and life advice and painting. And I loved it. And I was like, it would be great to have a show, to joke around. And specifically, the Navy nuclear community is a very niche and unique community. full of super, super smart people who are super weird. They're a bunch of strange people. And they have some amazing conversations where they, quote, nuke things out. We got a term, nuking it out. Overthinking, arguing technical points. Every Navy nuke, I'm sure, is kind of like a lawyer and a scientist and a passionate preacher all combined together.
Yeah.
Like if you want to tell one of them they're wrong, you get ready to go to court with them. And so I was like, well, we should have a podcast about recording these conversations because it's unique, it's funny, there's life advice, and we'll address some of the mental health issues, some of the suicide in the community, some of the lifestyle issues, some of the military issues. And one day it really all came together when we were sitting around a couple of nukes, because we were called nukes, and hence my show, Couple of Nukes, my company. And we were having a conversation. We were debating this meme, this joke on the internet that said, hey, would you choose this? You get immortality and vulnerability and millions of dollars, but there's this immortal snail that is hunting you down for the rest of your life to kill you. And we got into debating genetics, biology, space science, cosmic science, snail biology. We nuked it out. We were nuking it out. And I was like, this needs to be a podcast episode. But you don't have your phone on you in the nuclear community a lot of the times because of the work you do.
Yeah.
And a lot of nukes just prefer to drink or sleep and not podcast at all. A lot of people thought it was a stupid idea. No one wanted to join me. And so my show, Couple O Nukes, is actually, I always make the joke, the show is actually called Just a Nuke because it's just me. And, when I left the nuclear community, it became even more just a nuke. And so I pivoted into military mental health, but just to kind of keep it on theme with how the show was going already. But I became suddenly this, everyone knew Mr. Whiskey as this military guy, military mental health, veteran lives matter, and all this stuff. And I was like, wait. Yes, that's important. Don't get me wrong. But that's not my personality. That's not who I am. That's not what this show is supposed to be. And so I opened up the show to everyone because I wanted it to be for everyone. And I get, kind of slapped on the wrist by real podcasters who say, if your show is for everyone, it's for no one. You need to niche down. You need to be just nukes only and this and that. And I said, no, I run my show how I like, which is the idea is anyone can come to my show and improve their lives from it. Anyone can show up and learn something. Not every episode is for everyone, but everyone can find an episode. Yeah. And that, to me, is what matters. It's not about having this consistent listener every single episode. If you do listen every single episode, great. I love you. But if you don't, and you just find a few episodes insightful, but those few episodes change your life or help you or help a friend, whether that's with addiction or with suicide prevention, or maybe it's your physical fitness or your sleeping habits, that's good. The point isn't to funnel back clients to a business. My show isn't just one big pitch to promote something. It's that you come and you take what you need. And maybe because of that, I don't have as many consistent listeners that I can depend on to make a community or to make a profit. But if I have people globally, from all different parts of the world, all different age groups and genders and diversities, taking something away from one episode or 100 episodes, I mean, to me, that's amazing. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more with that, because everything that you just said there, it's very similar to how I operate this podcast as well, because I think sometimes like people stumble over the fact I call myself Andy Games, but that's because that's my online kind of handle, for other things, and that's how it started. But like it's like this is also something for everyone as well. Like you want to do people when you have like sort of solo or interview style podcasts, like it is for everyone, because you don't have to niche it down. Like obviously you're a Couple of Nukes, that's based on your origins of podcasting, but it does but the things that the topics that you can cover, it does branch out into like everything that you either have something to say about or you're passionate about. Like because I know obviously your podcast, it does take on a lot of things. You got like mental health, military. You combine those two things as well, and then there's like a little bit of spirituality in there. And interestingly enough, I noticed Gen Z and Gen Alpha as well. Um, I know you're quite outspoken about them, so let's like dive into that a little bit, because I personally think that the lower or the younger generations, I should say, they're coming into like a very different world that we would
Yeah.
have we would have grew up in. And like, so what sort of like themes and topics around these like generations like do you sort of cover and discuss on your podcast?
Yeah. So the thing is, it's funny. I was just on a podcast a couple minutes ago, and what I was sharing with them was I thought I was a millennial my whole life until I got confronted and someone told me that I was Gen Z, and they proved it, and it like broke, shattered
Oh.
my whole world. I was like, that's shit. That's disgusting. It was like if you ever seen the Boondocks, Uncle
Oh
Ruckus thinks he's
yes, I have
white,
seen the
and
Boondocks.
then
Love
they
that
gave him
show.
a DNA report and it says he's black. And it's
100,
like
yeah, he's
he tries to show himself,
102%
and it was like that
African.
same kind of energy where I was like, "Oh no, this can't be. This can't be Gen Z. I am a millennial. I just have Gen Z-itis, and I just each year I get more and more like Gen Z. Like I thought it was a disease, and no, but I believe that, unfortunately, God has put me in that generation to work with them. And the reason I focus on Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and whoever is next is because, yeah, sure, a lot of the millennials, boomers, and Gen X, whatever generations above me, yeah, they can still benefit from my show.
Mhm.
But when it comes to mentoring, to parenting, to a lot of stuff I'm talking about, it's especially applicable and effective for those younger generations who have yet to parent, who have yet to, or are currently dealing with. And again, all the generations above me, they know people who are addicted or suicidal. But a lot of what I do, I want to reach those generations in particular because they're the next generation.
Mhm.
It's always about the new generations. And right now it's Gen Z and Gen Alpha. And when I'm in my 40s and 50s, whatever, new generation names they come up with, by then it'll probably be some weird stuff, like,
Yeah.
generation, the logarithm of 2Z or something, they'll make some weird name for it for some reason. And so it's always about the new generation. And again, I help everyone. I work
Mhm.
with Vietnam veterans down to, teenagers,
Yeah.
because we all need a little help and we can all improve some part of our life. But for me, I want to reach those. The ironic part is that's the hardest generation to reach, in my opinion, because I could sit down and have a conversation with a millennial or Gen Xer and they'd be like, wow, I really hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Gen Z, Gen Alpha, not so much. You have to reach them in different ways, different mediums. And, you know, to some degree, it's interesting. My age works against me and for me. There's a lot of Gen Z, Gen Alpha people who don't respect me because of my age. And then there's a lot of them who are like, you understand it, you can relate because you're in the same generation.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting how it gives me both more relatability and power and less at the same time because they're like, well, what do you know? You're one of us. But I've never, this is going to sound so egotistical, but I walk among Gen Z. I'm not of Gen Z. I hate to
I
say
love
it like
that
that,
though. Like I love
but
that.
for
Like
real, it's I believe I want to be. A lot of people have said, Mr. Whiskey, you're one of the voices of that generation.
mhm.
You represent that generation, a very different side of it. You represent the revitalization side of it. Young people who believe in God, who are creating faith-based communities, who are working in suicide prevention, addiction recovery, who aren't addicted to their phones, who don't have that same mindset around social media and stuff. And so I've, and the reason, one of my the most popular episode of my show actually was Gen Z suicide prevention by integrating faith in social media,
Mm.
and so out of all the topics on my show, that was one of the most important and popular ones. And
Yeah.
I think it is important because I think also our generation has a lot more issues than the prior ones. Again,
Yeah.
suicide, alcoholism, addiction, all that stuff exists in the prior generations. But what the prior generations don't have as much as we do are the mental health issues in relation to social media. to
Oh yeah.
like if I took a middle-aged woman and we analyzed throughout her life how she felt about her body, um, while she was younger or even now, she may have self-esteem issues with her body. But if you took a young woman, it's going to be way worse. And if you look at the correlation of self-esteem and the launch of social media, suicide and the launch of social media, addiction and launch of social media,
Oh yeah.
I say it's causation more than it is correlation, to be honest with you, if you look at the numbers and the
Oh, for
stats and the
sure.
graph. But women of the prior generations, they had each other to compare to. Now, the women of our generation, it's not just your high school, classmates and your coworkers. It's porn stars, it's OnlyFans models, it's
Yeah.
sometimes photoshopped images, it's posed images, it's edited images, it's these influencers. Same with men. A lot of the guys that men compare themselves to are on steroids or they're frauds or they're edited photos. Same thing.
Yeah.
And the body standards have completely changed. Same with and same with porn. They're also comparing themselves to these guys in porn, and it's just awful. And that's not to say that there haven't been steroided guys throughout history, right? We
Oh
know that's
yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. We know plenty. I could name them, but it's worse. It's more accessible. It's
Oh yeah.
everywhere.
100%.
Even same with while there is a lot of divorce in the generations prior, the way relationships are, the trauma in relationships, the divorces, the marriage rate, the unexpected pregnancy rate, it's way worse in the younger generations. And
Yeah.
again, a lot of that has to do with social media, with the pornographic content, with the sexual content, with the way that, I will say rap, but even other genres of music portray men and women in relationships, the way TV shows and movies portray them, but especially social media.
Yeah.
And you have to think Gen Alpha, because even though I'm at the back end of Gen Z, so I wasn't born holding a tablet or an iPhone. I didn't get that until I wasn't even allowed to have one in high school. My godfather got me an iPod behind my parents' back. And I had an iPod. For those of you who know what that is,
Oh god.
just like
Bring them back. Bring them back.
yeah. So but nowadays I've seen toddlers on iPads and they've got full internet access. I mean, the average age of exposure to porn is 8 to 9 years old.
Wow.
I mean, people are having sex in fifth grade. It's true. I mean, these are friends I've had whose younger siblings have shared that they've had, sex in fifth grade, that
Wow.
they were watching porn when they were 8. So their access to content and the way it affects their brain development is much sooner and much worse, for like Mr. Andy, your age group, probably maybe men around your age group had the Playboy magazines at worst, and then later on computer access and, phones and stuff like that. But it's different, affects differently. And so that's why I do want to work more and more with Gen Z and Gen Alpha, but it's hard because most of the time I'm talking bad about them. But it's not to bash them or shame them.
No.
I highlight flaws and issues and patterns of trauma, of negative cycles of health, of psychology. And it'll definitely be interesting to, decades from now, look back at like what history says about this generation, what the
Yeah.
psychological studies show years later, the case studies, all the analysis and stuff. And we can even move into how, and I won't start this conversation with you unless you ask me to continue further, but how AI is beginning to change Gen Alpha and even Gen Z.
Oh yeah. No, 100% it is like, and like the whole thing with social media and like this digital age that's really kind of affecting more Gen Alpha, I would say, because as you say, yourself being on the cusp of between millennial and Gen Z, and like I'm kind of in the tail end of millennial as well. It's, I mean, you've spoke about your experience sort of with social media, and like you didn't have an iPod until like you're a little bit older. Like I think for me, I think my first experience on the internet, I would have been like maybe like 11 years old or something, and there was like the early days of social media, like you're talking like MySpace and stuff, and MSN Messenger, where the worst thing that could ever happen to you at that age, at like 11 years old in the early 2000s, was somebody said something that you didn't like on the internet, but you were just like, all right, X off that. That's fine. But there were, and I think that as well, to go back to your point about like the differences in like mental health between the older generations above, like older millennials and into Gen X before that, is it? Yeah. I think it is Gen. Is it? Yeah, it's Gen X before millennials, isn't it? Yeah, that's right. Um, so like there, there's more of an awareness around these things, and more of like people don't really like brush things off anymore. People think more. People are exposed to more things that can just, and like obviously with the comparison between the people on social media who they're getting paid to look the way they are. You know, like of course, like that's all changed. Like I kind of think being in like the mid 90s was that like sweet spot where yes, we in a way are heavily reliant on the internet, but we know how to kind of like moderate it. Whereas like like you said, we weren't born with tablets in our hands. But like now it's just like you go to like any restaurant anywhere and you will see a child in a high chair, 2 years old, 3 years old, just looking at something on YouTube on a tablet, and they can work that themselves. And like it's a sort of thing. It's like it's like a sort of quite a big measure for just like a small amount of silence for like a parent. And I can't really speak for parents because I'm not one, but it does just seem as though it's like, think of the long term effects of this. Like, do people really think of the long term effects of what they're exposed to now? Like, again, people live in the now and everything. It's very important to sort of hold that kind of mindfulness, but it's also equally as important to look at what the effects these things are having on you. And I don't know, like, what do you think of like the balance between mindfulness and sort of like future planning?
Yeah, so I want to say, like you said, the newer generations are more mindful of mental health, but they also have way more mental health issues. So
Yep.
it's like you have this increase in awareness and you have this increase in issues. So it's like this, scale. But what I'll say is I had an episode on this where I had a mother speak on there's a difference between, hey, you get the iPad or phone time as a reward
Mm-hmm.
to I'm a parent and I'm neglecting my kid. Here's the iPad, go play.
Yeah.
I have stuff to do. There's a big difference between how and why your children have access to technology. That plays such a huge role into it. And I think, like you said, it's important. One of the things we're seeing with AI is those long-term effects of, like, my generation, we went through school, high school, even college without AI. We wrote all our papers. We did everything. We researched. All the new generations, a lot of them just have Chat GPT or other AIs do
Yeah.
everything for them. And in an episode I had on applying traditional values to the modern world, me and Dr. Mark Teague talked about how it's important to have those foundational skills first and then use the tool to make it easier, right? He said, like, if you like many to be able to build cars by hand, and then all right, now let's have the assembly line do it. But if it fails, we know how to do it
Yeah.
ourselves. Like, to give an example, we know how to read and write. We know how to do stuff without AI. If AI goes away, I can write college level essay papers left and right. I can research, right? But some of these kids have never done that before.
Nope.
I know how to make artwork using digital tools. Some of these kids have all AI art is all they know, you know.
Yeah.
So another important thing is social interaction. One of the things I talked about with the Undoctor and some other guests on my show, AI, you conform everyone to your liking, right? You can customize your AI. Like I said, I could tell my AI, your name is Caroline. You're going to text me with emojis, exclamation marks, and positive praise only. No criticism ever. You just do as you're told.
Yeah.
In the real world, say you get a group assignment. I've had plenty of group assignments where I did not like the people I was working with, right? That's real life.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
when you get out of school, that's real life in the working world too. If you're not running your own company, right? You're gonna have coworkers you don't like. And it's not like you can just like let me update their memory and they're not gonna talk this way anymore, right? With AI, you're learning a different type of social interaction. And one of the things I'm curious about is I don't know how many young men and women out there are talking to the AI sex bots or chat bots online, right? There's plenty of apps where you can talk to one. There are AI apps where you can, and I'm not encouraging this, where you can talk to them and they'll send you dirty pictures that they generate. They can sext you and all this stuff. How is that going to affect them in real life relationships? How is that going to, like, I saw a great question proposed on the Diary of a CEO between an interview with Stephen Bartlett and some other guy. And then the guy was saying, if your girlfriend says, where did you get the answer to that? And you say ChatGPT, how do you think she's going to react? If it's like, because some people are like, I've seen people will upload their text between them and their significant other fighting and say, ChatGPT, am I being gaslit? Are they being narcissistic? How do I respond to this?
Jesus.
I'd hate to call him out. One of my friends the other day sent me a text. He goes, hey, I'm thinking of responding to my sister with this text because we've been fighting. I said, it came from the heart. It looks good. He goes, no, I had ChatGPT write this. I'm like, I was really disappointed in him.
Yeah.
And I really was because, you know, I will never do that. Will I have an AI help me with show notes or sometimes titles? Sure. I mean,
Yeah.
by all means, as long as it's not changing or creating anything. Never, though, would I ever come to a podcast and be reading off of an AI generated script. Never would I have an AI represent me. That's the human creativity. It's about the heart,
Yeah.
and I believe it's a godly spiritual thing too. I really believe that we were made by a creator who gave us the ability to create, and when we make these idols that can then create, it's I think it's a dangerous and bad road, and I think it really takes away from humanity. I think you look at everything from buildings to statues to gardens to paintings. We have created so many crazy, mind-blowing things. Every time I'm flying an airplane, I'm like, who made this thing? How? Like it is
Yeah.
truly we take everything so for granted. If you've ever been in an airplane, you just expect it to fly, right? Do you ever stop and think like someone made this, someone thought
Mhm.
this up, and like we are flying through the air. We're like, that's insane. And there are animals that could never make something that flies. It truly is such a special gift to be able to create. I think it's interesting looking at the social dynamics. Even like I had an episode on if you don't play games at home with your children, which we've seen the deconstruction of the traditional family dinner and family game night setup, right? And there are homes where children never play games at home. So their first time playing a game is in school and they don't know how to react. Now
Yeah.
they're flipped over the table and they've never been taught how to be a proper unsore loser, so to speak. I don't know what the word is. Just a good sport, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, and that goes into discussion too of which I'm against giving everyone a participation prize. Like looking at how that affects our children down the line. Not teaching competition, but equality, but in a different way. Not in a way that we're equal in rights, but we're equal in everything we do, whether we fail or succeed. That's not equality. Y- so it's and technology's role in that is definitely interesting. And I mean the deconstruction of the family interactions, of the friendship interactions, of the social skills. There's a lot of great podcasts. I don't cover too much AI stuff, but there's a lot of great podcasts I've seen clips of talking about how much it is affecting human behavior more than you think. And so like you said, it may be convenient in the now, but a lot of parents aren't thinking about, and a lot of these people using AI aren't thinking about how is this affecting me socially or my skills,
Yeah.
especially with the children. Like, how is giving my child a tablet now can affect them later on in life? And like, did I restrict enough or was I too restrictive?
Mhm.
There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that fascinates me about that is sort of if you look back a couple of generations, like to roughly around the age we might have been kids and sort of starting to get that kind of exposure to like technology and the internet and stuff like that. Um, I think back then it was much more of a slow burning thing. And then you get to like the 2020s, and that's when everything just skyrocketed at like a
Yeah.
terrifying pace. Because like to me, like I keep up with as much as I want to really when it comes to these sorts of things like technologically, like because
There's so much
there is
every
it's
day.
too much like and it was only actually maybe about maybe 6 months ago, if even, that I started using ChatGPT, and that's only just for help in terms of because like When you're doing this sort of thing, and if you're kind of like relying on social media to sort of help your kind of growth with your brand and everything like that, then you kind of have to play the game a little bit. You have to. It's all about
Right.
sort of search engine optimization and stuff like that. You kind of have to play the game a little bit. Um, but there's never been like a reliance on it. It's one of those things. It's like, I know what I'm trying to say. Neaten this up for me. Like, and it's just sort of, and for help with things like that. Like, yeah, but like what you said before, where there's so many people who don't know anything other than that. And like the social interaction thing, now I honestly, like, I never thought about it in a way that people were using it for those reasons. And it's shocking to me, to be honest, because like, maybe it's I mean, okay, well, it is a generational thing, but like, I wonder kind of where it sort of turned to be like, okay, I don't like this person. I'm just going to not really kind of, I'm going to have as much to do with them as I need to, and that's it.
Mm.
Like, whether it be somebody in the school playground when you're a kid or in work, we all have that, like you say. But what got to the point where, like, I mean, it's social media and all, but what turned where people were just like kind of, it really affected them? Like, is it a case, maybe, do you think that kids and younger people have gotten meaner, or is it like
100%.
a half sort of like hybrid between that and the sort of effects of social media kind of thing?
Oh yeah, 100%. Well, I want to first propose a question that you made me think of because you said you never thought of the social interaction part.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask this to everyone: are the texts you're getting today AI generated? Was the email you received today AI generated? It's getting to, I'm not a big Marvel fan, but in the Marvel comic book series, the Skrulls are an alien species that can look like people on Earth, and they invade the Avengers, and they look like each other, and it becomes a you can't trust anyone.
Yeah.
This is kind of like the invasion of the scrolls, but they're AI. It's like you could be texting people. I know people who their phone is run by an AI. They create an AI that mimics their personality based it. They fed it all their text messages from the past, all their
Wow.
emails, all their website, and the AI texts you as if it were them.
Brutal.
Now, I truly believe that people I'm texting are real people, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we're getting to the point. It's kind of scary where, hey, like, is is my partner really caring about me and is like saying the perfect things, or am I talking to an AI that knows how to address a person in my situation because it has hundreds of books on psychology, and it has all the text messages of other people in this exact situation,
Yeah.
and it's doing a ratio of what is most likely to convince Mr. Whiskey to stay in this relationship. That's a crazy thought that I never thought I would have to worry about. Just like
Yeah.
you're saying, you never thought you'd have to worry about this. Like it's crazy to think that we can't even trust some of the things we're being told now because it could have been AI generated. That is a crazy thought. But yeah, people are 100% meaner. I was just speaking on a podcast earlier today about the desensitization of the Gen Z and Gen Alphas, and how their respect for life and human value has gone down the drain.
Yeah.
How there's a lot of stuff they find funny on social media that is sexually immoral or weird or gory or disrespectful. You talked earlier about bullying and people you don't like. Let's talk about cyberbullying and
Mm.
how much worse it has gotten. People kill themselves all
100%.
all the time.
Yeah.
That I've been on episodes specifically about children's suicide, and I've had episodes on my show about the statistics of children's suicide. It's disgusting, and it's sad that children at 8 years old want to take their life and are. There
Yeah.
there are thousands of children taking their life every year at 10 years old. And that is so sad to think. And do you think it's because, like you said, if you didn't like someone on the schoolyard, I mean, when you went home, you didn't see them really.
Yeah.
And when you went out, right? Um, Now with the internet, you get bullied 24/7 sometimes.
Mm.
And a lot of kids are going on the internet because they're looking for social interaction. They're looking for human connection. They're looking for
Yeah.
attention. Um, and sometimes it's not always positive. In fact, most people describe Twitter and Instagram, or sorry, X and Instagram as war zones, as hellholes. And other platforms aren't like that necessarily. But you know, it's just, and here's my thing. Like, people ask me sometimes on my Instagram and my YouTube, I have all comments turned off. And on Instagram, only people who follow me can comment.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, that hinders your growth. Aren't you a podcaster and influencer and you want to grow? Here's my thing. I don't believe in providing a space or opportunity to spread more negativity, because that's what it is. I posted suicide prevention content, military mental health content, and you know what the comments are? Just awful,
Yeah.
inhumane things to say. People who are good, who want to comment something good or reach out to you to connect, they'll do the extra work of emailing me or going or following me and talking to me, right? People who are just hating to hate, because they're, most of the time, they're losers. Most
Oh
of the
yeah.
times, almost every time I've gotten hate online prior to me turning off comments, it was from losers and degenerates and people who had no life, people who were not successful. Not all of them, but like people who are actually genuinely successful, they won't hate on you. They'll say, hey, I remember when I was in your position and I'm
Yeah.
proud of you. Or like, here's some stuff to help you. Like, people who are successful because they're good people and because they're successful don't just hate or look down for no reason, right? There are some people who are stuck up and happens, but most of the time they're not going to make a public scene about it unless you're someone else publicly famous. But people, when they had the opportunity to just comment hate, and some of them enjoy seeing comment wars, right? There are people who instigate comment wars. When that's their thrill to quote troll people, you know, if they had to work hard at it, they're not going to do that,
No.
because they rather just slide down a reel and comment there, right? It's
Yeah.
easy. But when people want to do good, they'll go the extra step. So that's why I have comments turned off. I don't believe in providing grounds for more hate and negativity, because if you go in any comment section, there is some genuine advice shared. There is some love. Depends what social media app you're on and what kind of content it is. But for the most part, it is just hate, hate, hate for no
Yeah.
reason.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I don't know why, other than the fact that we're in a fallen world of sin and it gets worse and worse every day. But the younger generations, you also have to think, they're growing up seeing all of this, and this is just normal. This is how, to them, social media has always been a place of hate and
Yeah.
disgust and sin and sex and violence and gore. You know, they didn't grow up where social media was positive support, you know? And it becomes that balance of, well, if we restrict all hate and negativity, well, then that's not freedom, you know? So it's a very, you have to rely on people being able to be trusted with their freedom of speech. And unfortunately, a lot of people choose hate and violence because they're
Yeah.
unhappy with their lives or because they think it's funny. So when you ask the question, are the new generations just meaner? They're way meaner. They're evil. They're wicked. They
Oh
are
yeah.
people full of hate and resentment. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them on the internet. And part of that is due to the anonymity of it, you know?
Mm-hmm. Oh
Like, if
yeah.
you want to be a hateful person in real life, at a bar or school or work, you're right there. Everyone can see you. Everyone knows your name. Sometimes they know where you live,
Yeah.
right? They know your wife and kids, right? It's not a good time. On the internet, you have a picture of an anime girl and a fake name that says, you know, Andy Games underscore 94, right? Sometimes you have a name,
It's
you have
always
a,
the anime girl as well. Why is it always the anime girl?
it is always an anime girl. That's every hate comment I've gotten has been from like a picture of an anime girl or something. Ironically enough. So, but yeah, it's that safety, just like how road rage, how
Mm-hmm.
people, when they feel like they're safe and private in the car, they can just get away with more stuff. It's the same concept, only 100 times worse,
Oh yeah.
because they think, and that's another conversation, the digital footprint conversation. um
Doesn't go
and
away.
one thing I always remember, I think it was the Morgan Pierre, whatever his name is, he interviewed a OnlyFans girl. She was
Mm-hmm.
like a lawyer or a doctor, made high money, quit to sell pictures of herself naked online. And he said, what about your children when they go to school and
Mm-hmm.
they get bullied because their mom's basically a porn star, you know, and maybe she's never slept with another man online. Everything is exposed, right? All these
Yeah.
different pictures. And she said they can cry in their Ferrari. You know, that's what she said.
Wow.
I'll never forget that clip. And there was a different one where they were interviewing this brother and sister, young brother, maybe middle school, high school, and his sister was a porn actress. And they said, "Do you get bullied at school for it?" He goes, I'll be sitting on the bus and my friends will be watching her content saying, look who I'm watching, or check it out, it's your sister, dude. And or this is your mom. Hey, look, there's your
God.
mom getting railed by 10 dudes. Like, you know, and the digital footprint. I've seen some content that's just like, why would you ever post that? Or
Oh yeah.
why would you put they brought up in court one time this man and woman were fighting in court and they pulled up a video of the guy drooling into the girl's mouth on a public subway that they had posted on TikTok or Instagram, you know, stuff like
Oh
that,
my
like in
God.
court, you know, and I've seen people, you know, apply for jobs and their employer found. I know a woman who got kicked out of the Navy because she was doing OnlyFans content and she had her uniform and nameplate in the background,
Mm,
and they found her. And I don't know what it is. I think there's something in the military handbook that says you're not allowed to make that kind of content while in service. I don't know, but she got into trouble, you
yeah.
know, because it was her chief watching. That's the craziest part. Her chief was watching stuff like that and found her content and watched it and then got her in trouble.
Oh, conveniently after the fact, yeah.
But that's the weird part because it's like, Chief, why did you click on young 18-year-old Latina takes off military blouse? You know, why were you watching that, Chief? It was an accident. I was just scrolling. I don't know how this stuff works. I don't even know what this computer is. You know, it just pulled it up on its own. I don't know about this stuff. I'm 52 years old. I don't know how the computer just does it. You know, my son, he goes on the computer when I'm not around and this stuff pops up. This is a true story.
Yeah.
Chief, why were you watching that?
But yeah, that's an interesting point as well, the digital footprint. And to talk about the sort of things that are online that like have really desensitized the sort of younger generations. Like I'll be scrolling through like Instagram reels of an evening or something, and
People just
it's
getting killed.
yeah, it's all sorts of and it's the sort of stuff, like these are videos where you'll watch it kind of enough for the algorithm to kind of reel you in, and then all of a sudden the worst
Boom.
things happens, and now that's all you're ever going to see. And
Mhm.
and then like I don't know what it is, but like it seems as though that like on Instagram. So like Instagram used to be really good, but now it's kind of gotten a bit unhinged. Is probably the best way to put it. Like, and for some reason it's now become this like platform for casual racism, casual sort of sexual slurs kind of being thrown about. Like it's just like it's like being back in
And I can
2007, and
shock you with some information on that
yeah.
because if it is pre-programmed for that, because I'll give you an example. I have a bunch of different accounts on all these platforms, and some of them are just for different business stuff. And
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. My Facebook, never use it. I post my episodes that come out. That's it. The information Facebook has is, hey, it's Mark Wiskey, and he's, a male around this age group. And all my reels were just like bikini women,
Mm-hmm.
thongs and tits and all. And what's interesting is I had never scrolled through anything, maybe once or twice. Why is that automatically the feed? I
Yeah.
have an Instagram account I don't use, and it's all sexualized women based
Mm-hmm.
on just the fact that I put that I was a young male
Yeah.
when I made my account. That's what automatically came in the feed. Now, and even if you try to fight it, because I've set my feed to where it's just Bible quotes, just gym guys, David Goggins, clips of my own show, clips of other podcasts, right?
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, they always throw in some kind of
Yeah.
sexualized woman based on my age group. And then look, sometimes I like it not because of the sexualized woman, but because it was a funny joke or this or
Yeah.
that. But as long as she was in it, it's not about the content. They'll
Yeah.
flood your feed. You
Exactly.
like one picture of a goth girl one time, boom, becomes that. No, because I like Rhea Ripley from
Yeah.
WWE wrestling, and so my feed got filled with that. It had nothing to do with goth women. It had to do with wrestling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But it's interesting that it's already set up for that on accounts I
Mm-hmm.
don't use. Right, that is automatically the default just because I'm a young man. But some of my female counterparts who created an account, their feed was automatically something entirely different.
Mm.
Interesting that
Yeah.
their feed would be different based on their age and gender.
That's interesting. I've never actually thought of it
It
that way
should be the same
because
default feed for everyone, right?
yeah, because like that's the
And
same. I get the same thing too coming up on mine, and it's like every so often, and it's. I find sometimes that sometimes the algorithm resets or it goes across your profiles. Like I have about 4 Instagram accounts, and all for different things, and but every so often I'll go onto one and the algorithm will be similar to that of one of the other things that like so for
yeah,
example on my personal account um a coworker of mine sends me work related memes and that's that's fine. I'm happy for that to stay on that account. On my other accounts I want it to be structured more towards what the account is about, and but the common theme is there is always like some form of OnlyFans chick like in the midst of all that, and
yeah.
it's yeah, and even if it's like just blog content or something like that,
And when you
it's still
sign up,
pushing them. Yeah,
you pick like, oh, I like gardening, I like sports, I like because when you first start an account, usually they ask you like, what are your fields
yeah,
of interest, so we can program the algorithm. I never clicked women in bikinis. I clicked gardening, podcasting, running, writing, and working out.
hmm
So why are there the Latinas in Asia? Like it doesn't make any sense because that wasn't an option.
yeah,
And I
no,
wouldn't have put that as an option because that would have been terrible because it would have just been every post.
yeah, you're just outing yourself at that point, really. Like it's just sort of giving the algorithm what it wants, and yeah, it's yeah, and like social media, like I think with like short form content. So like we go back like 10 years to like Vine, for example. Like
Mhm.
Vine, I think the world wasn't ready for Vine. Is like the way I'm gonna put it. Like in terms of social media, Vine was fantastic. Could have done with a little bit more censorship, but that was the whole Twitter thing. That but it was fantastic, but I don't think the world was ready for it because it was more millennials and older Gen Z who were using it. And we never knew short form content. Now, yes, it was great, but I mean, I think to this day, people would still rather watch like a YouTube video who are around like our rough kind of age group. And and then TikTok kind of came and took over like the whole social media game. Instagram
And
and
the
YouTube
attention span
followed
has
with the
been
reels.
declining.
Yeah, the attention span is just absolutely out the window. And
It's down to about 8 to 10 seconds for I think Gen Alpha, and it was like 12 seconds for
mhm,
Gen Z.
yeah, absolutely. And like I mean, I think we're all in our own way. I think we're all kind of like guilty of that, like having our attention span shortened to some degree.
Mhm.
But like, I mean, and I don't know if this is a sort of excuse for it in a way, but like the way I try to like sort of justify it as such, but explain it is like if I'm not interested in something that I don't plan on or have to be like if something just doesn't interest me, I'm not gonna tune into it. Like I
Yeah.
subconsciously like tune out, but like at the same time, I could sit and watch like a 30-minute top
Yeah.
10 unexplained things caught on camera on YouTube, and like
Yes.
just like
Yes.
with I mean, I don't know if you ever seen like a series of that, but it's like this particular guy and he
Watch
put
Mojo top 10.
it's not Watch Mojo, but
Oh,
it's
okay.
this other guy, this independent fella. But he used to put on like a voice. He's like number 10 of my unexplained things that happen on
Oh, I know
camera.
exactly what you're talking about.
Fantastic, and I used to binge that series, and it was like I could have scrolled through Vine or TikTok for hours, but like that one video would have just been like, yep. I
Yeah.
have completely like scared the pants off myself before I go to sleep here. I am ready, and it's yeah, like
Well, and that goes into a lot of what I would like to share, which is, I mean, if everyone spent as much time studying or praying as they did on social media, like you
mhm,
said, oh, seven. So I believe the average Christian prays 7 minutes or less a day, and they're
yeah.
like, that's way too long. Yeah, like you said, they'll go watch a 30-minute episode of anime, or they'll say, I don't have time to do anything, and then they'll scroll through social media for sometimes two people.
Oh
Doom
yeah.
scrolling, as we call it. Sometimes people wake up 2 hours later. They're like, I've been scrolling for 2 hours. They always say one
Yeah.
more, one more. Here's the
No.
thing: women women and men. So like dopamine and lust are both things that affect your brain a lot and can become very addictive. And so, of course, your feed is populated with stuff that's going to trigger that. Because I say that for the people who are like, well, Mr. Whiskey, this sounds like a conspiracy. Why would your social media apps want to show you that kind of content? That makes no sense. This is a conspiracy. Because it is addictive. It is scientifically proven addictive and to change your brain, both lust, porn, social media, and dopamine. Even just memes. And you could say, well, I'm just scrolling through jokes for my little, and a lot of people call it just my dopamine hit for the day.
Yeah.
You
Oh
know,
yeah, I've heard that one
and
before.
one thing we can talk about, Mr. Andy, is the fact that human connection and communication, at least in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, is being replaced. And you brought up a great example with just sharing memes. Instead of
Oh yeah.
conversations, people are just sharing
Yeah.
memes and being relatable. How many people, and everyone listening, I want you to admit, if you're guilty of this, do you text people, or half the time do you just react to their text with a heart, a smiley face, or a thumbs up or down?
I hate that so much.
When they just give
I
you a thumbs up, well, what does that mean?
when
It
they
was a yes or no question. What the hell does that mean?
yeah, like I swear to God, right? So they introduced that was it first introduced on Facebook Messenger, I believe, about 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. And I used to just get that all the time, and it was like in the it's still there now, but it's in the bottom corner of your text, like where your text comes up next to
Now you can
that.
do any emoji.
And yeah, exactly, do any emoji, but it used to just come up with a thumbs up. And like back in the day, if you were texting somebody and they wanted to end the conversation, they would have just replied "K" or "Okay," right? Which again, to me, I always thought was ignorant anyway. But then it got replaced with just this thumbs up, and to me, I was like, that's the most ignorant thing. And I'm like, no, just say okay. Go back to the words, even if it's a one word dismissive answer. I don't care. Go back to words. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm all for the odd emoji, but just if it's relative to what you're saying to emphasize emotion in a conversation, right? That's to me, it's fine. Like you say a sentence, follow it up with a relative emoji, something that might kind of personify or humanize the conversation that you're actually having. But like the and it's because it's actually quite an interesting question that you ask with the sending memes and stuff like that being a sort of it's like fuel for people's relationships right now because it's quite an interesting one for me. But again, this could very well be like an age thing. Like I will send like reels and memes to like maybe about a dozen people at a time on Instagram, right? But these are people who I still actively speak to on a semi-regular to regular basis.
Yeah.
Like and it's yeah, I think it's because I never lived my life on social media. Yes, it became a relatively big part of it, but at the same time, it's like I can go months without seeing like a lot of my friends or chatting to a lot of my friends, but then all of a sudden something will happen, be like, oh yeah, this, that, and the other, or let's catch up, get a coffee or something like that, and it's fine.
Right.
You know, I think sort of the older generation seems to be more content in their company and being busy with their own life and kind of getting their own shit together basically, like for lack of a better term, you know. And it's like, but I kind of think that because there's that like less reliance on it, yes, we rely on it for communication, for XYZ, for entertainment, whatever it may be. But the only thing I think the difference is, or the biggest difference is, I think, is the validation, which is what like the younger people crave because they're not getting that like social interaction. They're not getting these like fulfilled relationships, and it's sort of it's so strange to me. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I do not pine for my teenage years. I'm so glad that is over with. But like,
Yeah.
you see like somebody now who is like that age, and you're just kind of like, I almost take pity on them because they're like, you're so wrapped up in your phone. Like who's out playing sports now? Who's out like, you know,
The FOMO, the fear of missing out, is like an actual diagnosis now because people are so, and like you said, there are people who can't put their phone down at all. But what I was saying, just to clarify, like, so I will send memes to a handful of people
Hmm.
every day, that all the time, sometimes once an hour, but I still talk to them. But like, I'll give an example to be vulnerable here. Like, my youngest sister and I had grew distant, and I confronted her. I said, we never call or talk anymore, and I want to talk more, and she's like, but we send memes to each other. That was her excuse. I said, that's not enough. That's not
No.
conversation. I don't know. Like, you're sending me memes about, military life or podcasting life or things that you find funny that I know I would also find funny, right?
Yeah.
But are you in school? Are you dating someone? Do you, go out
Yeah.
and do stuff? Like, I want to know about your life. Like, it's almost like a checkbox. Did I talk to my brother today? I sent him a meme that counts. It's not, did I have a meaningful conversation? It's
Yeah.
it's it's shallow, in my opinion. You know, I send memes to her still every day, and to some friends, but those are friends that I talk to, that I have conversation with.
Hmm.
It shouldn't be the cake; it should be the icing. So to
Yeah.
speak. Like, it's a
Exactly.
something you do on top of your relationship. It shouldn't be the relationship. And I
No.
think there's a lot of people who their relationship is just held together by sending memes. And it's like, what's your relationship outside of that? If the internet shut down, but let's say social media shut down,
Yeah.
am I still going to get phone calls or texts from you? Or it was that was it. It was just we were sending jokes to each other,
Yeah.
and does that
Exactly.
mean, and it's like, sure, it's like you could say, hey, I have 100 people who send me memes every day. Cool. I have a person who, if my leg got blown off, they would come and take off their shirt and tie a tourniquet around it. That was a
Hmm.
crazy example to give, but you
No,
understand
but
what I'm
that's
saying? It's
so,
like,
yeah, it's so
you have
true.
people who actually have a deep, meaningful connection with you in a relationship with you, or do you have just a bunch of, people that you send memes to? Like, the
Yeah.
difference between real friends and being popular.
Hmm.
It's like, sure, you could seem really popular. You could feel, and this goes to what you're talking about, validation, attention. Oh wow, I get memes sent to me from 100 people. That's cool. How many times have you actually gone out this week and met any of them? Zero. They
Yeah,
live in the Discord
exactly.
world. It's different, and it's sad. Just like with the texting, the AI sex bots or chat bots, not all of them are about sex. Some of them are just friends or
Hmm.
therapists even.
Yeah.
But again, you're talking to someone, and you're meeting that checkbox. But this is someone you never go out and get coffee with. You never go play bowling. You
Yeah.
never, sit down together on a couch and watch, behind the camera. You never do stuff with them. And again, this AI bot, it sounds like it has feelings. Shoot, it's sending you topless pictures saying they love you, and they want a future with you, right? That's a future you're never gonna have. You're never gonna have
Oh
kids
yeah.
with this machine. Well, maybe in the far, far future, things are getting pretty crazy. Japan put out a video not too long ago of a guy kissing an AI robot. That's a different
Oh
story, but
wow.
yeah, they only her face was human. The rest of her, they didn't like paint or put clothes on, so it's kind of,
Whoa.
it was like if she had a mannequin robot body
Yeah.
and just like was
But
wearing a
the
face mask. It was, to each their own. He looked like he was having a good time, but
wow.
again, it's the idea of connection versus actual connection. Like you said, validation, and well, that's the thing too. A lot of these women who post their bodies online, wow, 100 guys calling me pretty online. Yeah, well, half of them are perverts. First of all, half of them are your dad's age. Second of all, half of them aren't even dressed when they commented. Third of all, you know, how many people think you're pretty and actually mean it, or actually think you're pretty on the inside? Like, the
Hmm.
people seek so much attention online, like you said, that validation, attention, and it's all about making their lives so public. Whereas some of the older generation, it's nice to have some privacy to,
Yeah.
and sometimes I get caught up in that, and I've been confronted by my friends like, Mr. Whiskey, you're always Mr. Whiskey. Every time we go out, you got to do a photo shoot to promote your show or this or that. Can you just be with us? And I try to balance it as best I can. But unfortunately, there are some people, every time they go out, they are influencing. That
Oh
is
yeah.
that is it. They
Absolutely.
don't have, like, I have a balance. There are plenty of times I go out, no hat, no camera, no microphone. I don't go out without the hat too much, but you get what I'm saying. It's like
Yeah.
everywhere you go, you're not Andy Games _94. Sometimes you're
Exactly.
just Andy, and
Yeah.
sometimes you're just underscore 94, I guess.
Oh,
Depends on the day.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, this this whole world for me and my real life are two entirely different things. Like,
Mm,
I most of the people I know, like in real life, they don't really sort of share this interest with me. They don't like they don't watch if I ever stream on Twitch of my game stuff. If they don't watch that, some people might engage with it just and talk about it to me, but not very many at all. They don't really engage with the podcast. Yes, but yes, they're all supportive of it, right? But that's kind of a whole different thing. And that's fine because I almost prefer that because to all these people, I I'm just Andy, and to them, that's all I want because that's all it's ever been. But like on the internet, I'm Andy Games underscore 94. I host Behind the Camera with Andy Games. I'm not living a separate life. This is just another part of it that I keep separate
mm,
from the right things. Um, I don't post on social media much personal stuff outside of what I do here. Even if that is a bit of a push, I'll use Twitter a lot because the one thing I like about Twitter actually is like its algorithm is really nicely tailored for me and it doesn't seem to change. So because I don't search anything on Twitter and if I see someone's liked something and it comes up, I'm like, don't care if it's not relative to what I want to do on this. But that aside, like it's yeah, I think that people don't really have that sort of like balance. And what you were saying before as well about like say the internet shut down or social media went down and you didn't have someone to send memes to, would you still have that connection? That immediately reminded me of COVID. So 2020, we all remember it. It was a pretty weird time to say the least. It sucked. Yeah, yeah. Like I think I had about 2 months out of it that was beneficial for me, and then it just all went to kind of crap again. But that being said, like there was so many people who I was friends with who I'm not going to say I'm no longer friends with, but who I just have little to no contact with anymore because of what that relationship consisted of. And all those relationships, what they consisted of was going out for beers every so often. And that was it. And then you couldn't do that during COVID. And then just you move on with life. And then, you don't reach out to people, people don't reach out to you. And then it's kind of a sort of, okay, that's fine. I'm just gonna kind of live my life, and you can live yours. And it's not like there's no animosity behind it, but it's one of those things. It kind of makes you realize the depth of the relationship that you had with people. Not to say that you can't revive that, but it's to me, it's a similar sort of thing. And like
Same
it's
when you move or leave a
yeah,
job. And there's a
exactly.
lot
Oh
of friends
yeah.
I had who turns out they were coworkers, not friends. It's like
Oh dude,
while
hundred
you're at the
percent.
job, you're going out, hanging out, whatever, you leave and they're like out of sight, out of mind. With the military, it's a little more justified in the sense that you're in different time zones. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you're in a combat zone, night shift, right? Schedules get crazy. But when it's like, hey, the store down the street and suddenly like, I left and I moved to the store across the street, we're not friends anymore. It's like, you
Yeah.
learn quick, who your friends are when you leave or when you move states, like you said, you find out who you're really with. And then
Yeah.
you talked about a very routine, like a friendship became a routine that
Mm-hmm.
checked out every Friday. Hey, we went out for a beer this Friday
Yeah.
night, but it's like, well, what if I want to do something different? It's like, whoa,
Oh
whoa, whoa.
yeah, like these people, like I would never have met them for a coffee, and it's not for no reason. It's just because that's just the way that these groups of people worked. It was just like every so often we'll all go on a big night out. We all used to work together, kind of keep that kind of spirit alive. And then once we couldn't do that anymore, no one ever did, and it was kind of like okay, and that's it's not a bad thing. Like it just happens. Like even if you take COVID out of it, the same thing might have happened anyway. And like there's no obviously telling, but like it's just such an interesting concept. Like when you could have sort of look at like the relationships that people have, and obviously like the sort of when you go into the depth of it, like what does it really mean? And I kind of feel like that's something that just hasn't changed as a principle, but it's more something that the reasons or the main sort of substance of it has changed, kind of thing. Um, but so yeah, just to, you mentioned about the military again. So you in the, how long were you in the military for in the
I
Navy?
was in for 3 years.
3 years, yeah. And just on the sort of that's a long time alongside the topic that we've been talking about, like regarding like mental health. I know that you've been sort of you've mentioned before about the sort of suicide rate in the military, and
Mm.
is that a conversation that obviously the conversation about it happening on social media is happening, but is that same conversation happening within the military as well?
That's a really interesting piece. You find the people who talk about it the most are veterans and,
Mm-hmm.
even civilians who aren't in the military. In the
Yeah.
military itself, I don't know what kind. I'm not a part of that,
Yeah.
conversation as far as the higher ups go. But yeah, it's curious. Like, what are the congressmen saying? What is the Department of Defense saying? What are their higher ups talking about? They even know? Are people
Yeah.
bringing in the numbers? Are they chasing after those numbers, saying, "Hey, we just had this many suicides across this amount of bases in the U.S. alone. This is concerning." Yeah, if you go online and you type in veteran suicide, you see all these people saying 22 a day, this and that.
Wow.
Here's the thing: there are a lot of conversations about military mental health, and it's all by veterans or active duty, but it's never by these higher ups that actually have the power to make the change,
Yeah.
right? Sure. I mean, if enough veterans get together, we can petition something or enact change. What a lot of veterans do is they just make their own company or nonprofit to help out. But what we really need is someone powerful with money in politics to say, hey, this is a issue.
Mm-hmm.
To go to big Navy, big Marines, big Army and say, hey, you guys are having this amount of deaths across this amount of base. What's going on? And then, it becomes this ripple down effect of who's blaming who's pointing fingers.
Yeah.
And it becomes such a blame game instead of all right, listen, we need to make change. We need to change. And I think a lot of times the military makes changes to address it in a stupid way or a way that isn't effective, not the right way.
Yeah.
And one of the things I always share is that the worst part of my show, in my opinion, that I have discovered is that every veteran and military guest I've had on my show, from Australia to the United States, from Marines to Navy to Army, Air Force, they've all had the same complaints, the same issues, and the same reasons behind why people had committed suicide or turned to alcohol or drugs or had mental health issues or their journey with the VA. If I made an Excel spreadsheet of my show and tracked down every guest, every branch, every country, every issue they dealt with, I could present it to the military, say, well, here's a highlighted sheet in size 72 font for you to clearly read that says, these are the issues that are happening that need to be changed. And these are issues reported all the way back from Vietnam veterans
Wow.
to people like me who just got out across every branch, across the states, across countries. So you clearly can see what is wrong. So why isn't it being fixed? And then they get these excuses. Budget can't support that. We're trying, but people are resisting us in Congress. The military is too big to enact these changes, or it would take too much planning and money to make this change. A lot of it, though, most of the issues on that spreadsheet, so to speak, could be changed simply by leadership and by job positions, by the community itself. It's not a lot of the physical structure, not a lot of the lifestyle as far as like how the military itself operates as a structure. It's the people and the systems,
Mm-hmm.
and that can be influenced by the higher ups, right?
Yeah.
And that needs to trickle down, and there needs to be accountability, and there needs to be change, and then that change will propel a new cycle. Right now we're still in this continuing cycle of bad leadership, sailors who hate their lives and get out, bad sailors who stay in and become the leaders that were just there. You keep this cycle. So that for me, that's the truly sad part. Are people talking about this? Do people know about it? Yes. You know how many books there are about veteran suicide? You know how many episodes of my podcast alone have addressed that subject, let alone the thousands of podcasts hosted by veterans and active duty military members about this. It's not a matter of people knowing, it's a matter of the right people knowing.
Yeah.
Is yeah.
It's an interesting point, like, and it's such a shame that the topic of mental health, and this is, I think, a universal thing where it's like like you said, it becomes a blame game, and it all fizzles down to the bottom to the point where it's just forget about it kind of thing. It's like we'll address it
Yeah.
in the next quarter, whatever it may be. Like, and it's just like I think it's just a matter of the people who are in charge of these decisions not having a clear understanding of what it all means, because they don't have that kind of empathy. They've never dealt with it before themselves. Now, obviously, it's just a generalization, because you don't know necessarily what everybody goes through on an individual level. But that to me is what it sounds like. Because if there was like, yes, okay, I mean, if you're running a country, you could argue that there are bigger things to worry about, like infrastructure and things like that, and just the economy
Yeah.
and things. But at the same time, you need people in your
Yeah.
country
The well
to,
being of your people.
yeah, exactly. You need these people to be able to help your country thrive, to grow, to do all these
Mhm.
things. And in order to do that effectively, or at least more effectively than the state of things now, they need to have good mental health. They need to be like appropriately compensated for what they do in good conditions. Occupational health needs to be a much bigger thing than what it is
Yeah. The
globally.
standard of living.
Yeah. Like, and occupational health is only like a relatively like, well, I don't want to say it's a relatively new thing, but like more so that it's more promoted within sort of industries now, because it was the sort of thing, if you ever needed a mental health day, you just kind of went into work anyway, and just kind of was just like, you just got through it, and then until you clocked out. And now it's just kind of like you do have the access to these things, but then it then becomes a case of, do you speak to the right person? I know I have had very conflicting visits to occupational health within work, and it's interesting. It makes you really realize some people should not be in that role, being as a decision maker for
Yeah.
somebody's mental health. Whenever, in some cases, what it comes down to is your life is in somebody else's hands. Now, that's obviously the most extreme worst case scenario, but some people, man, oh my god, like, it's
Well, and they don't
just,
look at those kinds of qualifications, right? When it comes
yeah.
to positions of power, the qualifications are so, like information based in terms of like, do you have these kinds of degrees or have you had these kinds of positions? Not, that's the thing. When it comes to some positions like teaching, for
Mhm.
example, you could meet all the academic requirements, but do you have the personality to teach, to
Exactly.
have behavioral management, to know mental health, right? It's like, yeah, it's like there's not training or selecting a selective process over like, but can you actually work with people?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, even like I've had some people say like cops shouldn't respond to suicides unless they're specially trained in suicide prevention and mental health. Like obviously cops are first responders to those kinds of incidents, but we should make a third party organization specifically who are trained or
Mhm.
within the police academy specifically on mental health and suicide prevention.
Mhm.
Just like if someone's going to be in charge of the lifestyle of people in the military, well, are they actually, what do they know about lifestyle? What do they know about
Yeah.
military lifestyle, mental health? Or are they just qualified because of their paperwork says, hey, this guy knows how to build structures or whatever it may be? It's like, and sometimes it's not even about qualifications. A lot of times in the higher up of the government and military, it's about money and politics.
Yeah, and tenure as well is a big thing with that. Like,
Mhm.
and That goes outside the military too. Like, I mean, there are so many like on paper underqualified people to, I suppose practically as well, and you can just be honest about it, like, but who fall into leadership roles because they've been in a position for so long and they have like a relatively high turnover. And like it's quite interesting what you say, how like, people will be in the military, they will leave because they hate it. It's just not what they thought it was. And then you get the bad people who stays and then become the leaders, and this sort of vicious circle continues. And I I think you see that in all. I know I've certainly dealt with that in my line of work, and it's just kind of like you just look at some people and it's like you're not fit for this. You have
Well,
no
and
empathy.
a lot of leaders, especially bad leaders, want someone who thinks just like them, acts just like them. In the
Mm-hmm.
military, I saw a lot of promotion was based on sometimes bribery, but for the most part, did you screw over other people and were you a kiss up to the higher up? And that meant, even if that meant moral compromise, even that meant screwing
Yeah.
people over. And then, that higher up likes it because he's like, all right, now you're gonna have people do that for you. And when you were talking about, like, as a government, you should be concerned about the well-being of your people, their mental health, just as much as running the infrastructure. Same with the military,
Yeah.
because you're like, hey, the job got done. That's all that matters. Cool. Now all those guys, that whole division of good qualified sailors, they all left. They said, F you, I'm going to be a civilian. And now you've got a bunch. Now you got to start from square one again.
Mm-hmm.
There is a retention and recruiting crisis in the military for a reason. Same with the government. I mean, look at the past in other countries, the coup d'etats and overthrows of the government. A lot of times it's because, I mean, you look at how all the government leaders were rich and living this great lifestyle, and then other people, half the country couldn't eat.
Yeah.
It's like,
Oh yeah.
look at that. So it's interesting.
That's still the same. Like it's one of those things. It's like it looks less evident when you see it because of how the way media controls things, but that's still the
Mhm.
case now, man. Like I mean, look at America, look at the UK. There's so much poverty in both of those places,
Mhm.
and albeit like the UK is what like a a quarter the
Yeah.
size of terms of population than America, but like there's
Yeah, both
still
of those
such a
countries have
high
a guy with
poverty.
billions of dollars
Yep,
to
and
himself.
there is such a high poverty line with that, and it's just absolutely like it just yeah. I mean, it baffles me. However, to turn to a lighter note, just
Yeah.
yeah. Um, you also amongst all the things that you have done over your sort of time with a couple of nukes, comedy appearances has also kind of fallen into that over the last year or so.
Yeah.
How did you fall into that? Now I can understand sort of why, because very good sense of humor. We've had such a good laugh
Appreciate
over the
it.
time
Yeah.
we've been talking, but how did it come about? You like taken to the stage to deliver a stand up act?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question because it gives me a chance to encourage and inspire other people right now, which is the first time I ever performed comedy was at Podfest. And that was a podcasting conference I went to. And what was interesting was it was my first time ever traveling alone to a different state, first time going to a conference, first event in the civilian world after military. And it was thousands of people, almost 3,000 people.
Mm,
And I came up in a household where I didn't interact, where my parents controlled me, kept me in this bubble, didn't really socialize at all, barely with family members, let alone with other people. And so I was already way out my comfort zone. I guess some part of me, when they said, hey, we're having an open mic and people can sign up to do comedy, part of me was like, well, we're already in hell. We might as well, go down another layer, so to speak. It's like I've already traveled to a different state by myself. I'm talking to thousands of people. I don't do any of this stuff normally. I never thought I was a podcaster. Sure, let's do it. And I was terrified. I had to make everything up on the spot. It's not like I came prepared with a skit or anything because I never planned on doing comedy.
yeah.
So I had to make it up. My legs were shaking, my heart was pounding, and it did pretty well. And I was like, okay, I like this. And the idea was, that it would cross promote my podcast, that I would do comedy, and through my comedy I could reach people and send them to my show, or just reach people in general
Yeah.
who it opened the doorway for conversation where they were like, hey, I like this guy's humor and personality. And so I feel more comfortable talking to him about addiction or suicide. It was supposed to be, it's another medium to connect with people.
Yeah,
I spoke
absolutely.
at, yeah, and I spoke at Podcast Movement Evolution Chicago on properly integrating comedy into your podcast to reach people or to address certain subject matters, because it's not for everyone. In fact, I won't get into it now because I've done 2 episodes in a row now on other shows about this, but about military humor and dark humor and
Mhm.
morale and the role of humor and the civilian world's difference between, us and them. And, so yeah. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to start doing an open mic once a month to practice. And I never did that. I performed for the second time ever last October on the Podcasters Cruise, now called the New Media Cruise. And after that, I was like, all right, once a month, we got to do an open mic. Still have not performed since then. So it's funny you bring this up, Mr. Andy Games _94, because I am actually planning on performing pretty soon here.
Oh,
It may be
brilliant.
before this episode comes out, actually, by the time this comes out, or
Oh.
afterward, but I have been planning about, I want to go perform, not in my hometown, where I live, because it is biblically, written, there is no honor for a prophet among his hometown. And
Mhm.
I apply that to comedy because I don't want to have a bad performance and I'm walking down the street, some high schoolers see me, they're like, there's that unfunny cowboy from the bar the other night. My mom said you suck. I don't want to have to deal with that. Um,
Yeah.
and there's a lot more pressure when you're like, hey, everyone, I'm a local here. I live down the street. Yeah, my house is right
Mm.
over there if you want to throw tomatoes at it. So I want to drive out and do it. But actually, funnily enough, we were talking about what I might talk about is what you and I were talking about before we started recording here, which was I think we're gonna start with. So I recently went on a trip to Japan and did a whole bit about Japan. I'm not sure. See, like the idea of planning it out seems cool, right? It's like, all right, I've got it
Yeah.
prepared and nothing can go wrong. Last time when I was supposed to perform on the cruise ship comedy, I knew for a year almost. And when I made the jokes on stage 5 minutes beforehand, as I'm walking up on stage, I'm like, what the hell am I going to talk about? I procrastinated bad. Same with my yeah. So, when you speak from the heart, what I need is I need, this sounds so conceited, I need my own show where like for 15 or 30 minutes I can do comedy, because the 3 minutes, I don't know if you've ever performed comedy. three
Oh
minutes is
no.
like, that is a crunch to try and pack jokes into there that are good, that hit. Like, because a lot of comedians, yeah, I watch people perform all the time. I'm like, this looks easy, because when you've got 30 minutes, you can really build up.
Yeah.
You can tie back to old jokes. You can set up for new jokes. Like, it's great. When you have 3 minutes, that's like no time at all to do anything. It's rough. I've got my watch on. I'm like looking at it like I gotta talk faster, and everyone's like, you're talking too fast, slow down. I'm like, I'm not gonna get to the punchline at this rate.
Yeah, and like comedy itself is such an unforgiving thing. Like I've never been in the position to ever do like an open mic or any stand up, and it's one of those things I am like happy I never ever do it in my life. Totally happy because I am a big overthinker. So if I wrote I could write down 10 jokes that I think were absolutely all timers, but that's me. The humor is that subjective. I overthink it to boot, and I'm
Worst
just
feeling in
like,
the world is you're on stage, and I experienced this. You're on stage, you tell a joke, you think it's hilarious, and no one gets it. And it's just
oh,
like silence.
you'd
That's the
almost
loudest silence
rather
I've ever
like,
heard. Yeah,
oh,
it's bad.
you'd almost rather they didn't find it funny than not getting it. Like, oh
Yeah.
man,
Well, and then like later on, they come up to you and they're like, "Can you explain that joke?" And then you explain it. They're like, "Oh, that's hilarious. I wish I wasn't so stupid and understood it." And it's like,
no,
yeah,
and you
like
can't go
that.
back up and do that again. Oh man, that's
Yeah.
brutal.
Now that everyone understands what I'm saying, so there was this guy, you got to go back to doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like my roommate, long story short, he used to talk about he was scared of drowning. And so
Hmm.
he joined the submarine And I said, well, that's kind of crazy. He goes, no, I joined a submarine, so I'll be crushed to death. I'll never drown. I'll just explode into dust. And so I did a whole comedy bit about that because I thought it was hilarious because we were on the cruise ship.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I bet most people here don't know how to swim. I was joking about how in the Navy, no one knew how to swim. Well, I went into a joke, my very last joke. And the worst is when your last joke doesn't land because, like, then I walked off stage and everyone's like, oh, you know,
It's like, oh yeah.
it was my last joke was about how he used to tell me that he was going to kill himself if the submarine started slow leaking and he was going to be in a position to drown. He kept a bottle of bleach on him to drink and kill himself. And he said he wanted strawberry flavored bleach. So I did a joke at my last show about um, how he was going to kill himself with bleach, and I thought it was so funny. And I said when I told, and we were talking about that, I was like, and so when I went on this cruise, he packed me a travel size and a little bleach bottle of zero. No one understood that he wanted to kill himself with the bleach. They're like, why does this guy have
Ooh.
bleach? And that was the last joke, so it sucked. And I was like, I thought it was obvious. This guy says, I don't want to drown, so if the submarine starts filling with water, that's why I have this bottle of bleach. Like, because he's going to drink and kill himself. I thought that was obvious. No one
Yeah.
understood that. And I
Oh
was like, I
man.
guess, I don't know. Maybe I was in the military. Everyone just talks about killing himself every day. So I thought it was obvious. If someone came up to me
Oh.
and said, you know what I got this for, right? And it's a bottle of bleach. I'm like, yeah, to kill yourself. But I guess civilians don't get that. All the middle-aged moms there were like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Wrong audience. I needed like 10 Marines there or something. I needed like a crew of Navy guys to be like, pull out their bottles. They're like, "Yeah, we got one, brother. Cheers." So yeah,
Yeah, that's
comedy is
it. And you can never
but like I
really.
said, um, the fact that I just decided like, hey, screw it, I'm already here, let's go.
Yeah.
And like my thing was like, if it goes terrible, never gonna perform again. But
At least
who
you'll have done
cares?
it though. That's the thing,
Yeah,
like
and that's
doing
why I
it
always tell
is.
my friends, I'm trying to convince them to go on stage with me next time I do an open mic. I'm like, look, if it goes wrong, it goes wrong. I mean, it's some random bar. You're never going to see these people again. Who cares? Do an anonymous thing for all I care. Wear a mask. I don't care. But just do it at least once in your life to say you've done it,
Mhm.
And if it goes great, you might find a hidden talent you didn't know you had.
That's it. Yeah. Like, I mean,
And then spend the rest of your life talking about having people come up to you. So when's your next open mic? And you're like,
oh yeah.
I'm a one-hit wonder like Biz Markie, like I made
But that's the thing though. It's so true. Like, I mean, I always say like the fear of doing something is worse than actually doing it. And sometimes
yeah.
it's one of those things. What's the worst thing that can happen? And it's that it doesn't go well. You feel embarrassed. You feel a bit crap for a bit, but you get over it, and then you're just like, okay, well, I don't
People are
have to
pretty
ever
supportive.
do that again. Yeah, that's it. Like, I think I kind of think that it's so easy to get in your own head about these things because people are so like self-conscious and self-aware that they kind of think, oh my god, all these people are gonna like laugh at me. They're gonna kind of this, that, and the other. But that's like people people are still sympathetic and empathetic too. Like, I mean, just
Especially with stand-up
yeah.
comedy, a lot of people are like, honestly, I would never have the, what to go up on stage and do that. They're like, I would never be able to do that. So the fact that you even did that, like,
Yeah.
I feel like there's a lot of respect for stand-up comedians. Like, even if I see someone who's like not so funny, I'm like, but I understand, like, to just go on stage and
Mm.
start telling jokes, especially if you have a rough crowd, like, and to recover over that. And what I'll say is like, part of me is like terrified to do stand-up comedy again because of the same idea. Like, what if no one laughs? And I've already done it twice and people laugh. So I'm like, obviously I've got something going here, but
Yeah.
it's still scary because every time you never know what's going to happen. But at the same time, the idea of like walking off stage and having people come up to me and be like, that was hilarious, like that's a great feeling.
Hmm.
So stand-up comedy is one of those things where you're so torn because part of you is like, it's such a great feeling, and the other part of you is like, it's gonna be the worst time ever. So,
I
but I
know.
think, like you said, I encourage everyone to do it at least once, just to say you did it, and it doesn't cost you anything. A little bit of, personal pride. Maybe if you have some jerk in the crowd who gives you a hard time, but there's gonna be a jerk everywhere you go.
Yeah.
We already talked
Exactly.
about that. Every time you open up a comment section, you're gonna find at least five of them.
Oh God, exactly. Exactly.
I'm sure I'll get an email from this episode about how I should go kill myself. So
Well, I hope not. I hope not.
I hope not either, but
No.
I hope it goes to spam. Oh, and so 20 days from now, when I check my spam folder, I'm like, oh shoot, look at that.
It's like, oh, I did get that email, but at least I didn't see it for 20 days.
And it says, oh, sorry. At the end, it said a follow-up email. Sorry, I meant this for Andy Games _94, not you, Mr. Whiskey. And I'll be like, oh, awesome. I'll forward it on. I'll make sure he gets it. I'll pass the regards to him.
But yes, on that note,
his next Twitch stream, I'll hop on the live chat and be like, hey, this guy sent me an email about why you should kill yourself.
Yeah, under a pseudonym. Yes, Mr. Whiskey, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Behind the Camera Dandy Games. Thank you so much for your time. It's been such a great insight, great conversation, just, very, very enlightening. Before we do wrap up, I would just like to give you the floor for you to promote Couple O Nukes and just the sort of things that you do with that and where people can find you. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, first of all, I appreciate having the conversation with you. We touched a lot of different subject matters in that time. We started off with making a podcast about immortal snails, and then somehow it was AI sex bots, and then it was social media, and then there was suicide in the military, and then there was comedy. So we touched upon a lot of great subjects, but there was a lot of, I think, comedy and life advice along the way. So I appreciate the long form content and hosting me. And yeah, coupleonukes.com, coupleonukes.com. If you go there, you'll find all my social media platforms where you can reach out to me. Don't send me any hate, on there. But if you want to reach out to be on the show, to have me on your show, or just to have a conversation, I'm always open to talking to everyone. It doesn't have to be behind a camera or behind the camera, but it does. If you want to have that conversation, it does exist, that possibility. I love connecting with people, but the most important thing I would say is my website has every episode of my show and every guest on there categorized. So if you want to go look at Vietnam stories, or you want to improve your sleep, your mental health, your physical fitness, you want career advice, financial advice, whatever it may be, it's there for you to find as easily as possible, with a whole bunch of resources, both from myself, my show, and then from guests and other stuff like that. So I highly encourage checking out my website. You can find every show I've been on, every episode of my show, some of my comedy, some of my written works, and a lot of great stuff. And in the future, you'll be able to find the episode with Andy Games _94 on my show. I'm going to call it Behind the Microphone, just as a little joke. It's like not behind the camera, or I'll call it Not Behind the Camera. Then I'll make it audio only. But I really, I really do appreciate you hosting me today. It's been a great time.
Been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you. Make sure, yes, if you're listening to this, make sure you do check out Couple O Nukes. And to go back to a theme that we touched on at the very start, as a nice full circle moment, there is something out there for absolutely everybody. So be sure to check out Mr. Whiskey's Couple O Nukes website. Once again, thank you so much for your time. It has been an absolute pleasure, and I will catch you again soon. And that is a wrap on episode 50 of Behind the Camera with Andy Games. Big thank you to Mr. Whiskey for an incredible conversation, and to Logan64, that's Logan with 5 A's, 64, for our brand new theme music. Want to support the show? Hit the link tree in the About section for socials, merch, and much, much more. Every follow, like, and share means the world. And on a personal note, I would just like to say thank you everybody for 50 episodes of Behind the Camera with Andy Games, and here's to 50 more. Until next time, stay creative, take care, and I'll see you soon. But until then, peace.